Hello everyone. I am back with another lecture, that is development of cardiovascular system. Now cardiovascular system is basically a very important system and is very important for cardiothoracic surgeons, pediatric surgeons and so on. So basically, in order to understand the gross anatomy of cardiovascular system, one has to be well versed with the embryology of cardiovascular system. And there is a saying, the most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. Some also say that matters of the heart are very complicated. So in order to make it easier for various students to understand the gross anatomy of heart, I am here with the development of cardiovascular system. Now the learning objectives are, by the end of the class, one should be able to explain the development of heart and the anomalies related to the development of heart. Now before moving on to development proper, there are some facts one should know, that cardiovascular system is the first system to start functioning in embryo on day 22nd, and blood flow begins during the 4th week of intrauterine life, whereas the entire cardiovascular system is mesodermal in origin. Cardiac wall is 3-layered and is made up of endocardium, myocardium and epicardium from inside to outside. Primitive heart tube forms from the mesenchyme in the cardiogenic area of the embryo, and the myocardium and epicardium are formed from splanchnic mesoderm surrounding the primitive heart tube. So before going to the topic proper, there are certain sequence of events one should know. Initially, the cardiogenic field appears, and then the two heart tubes or the endocardial tubes are formed, which fuse to form a primary heart tube. Then it undergoes certain changes to form dilatations, and cardiac loop is formed so as to achieve the adult structure, and further there is development of various chambers of the heart. Now this is the 3rd week of development. This is a clay model showing the 3rd week of development, where the head and tail folding has occurred. Head and tail folding has occurred, and the two heart tubes and the pericardial cavity are lying just below the foregut, whereas the septum transversum lies behind it. And there are 3 important structures, that is developing brain, notochord and the gut, along with the buccopharyngeal membrane. Whereas the gut is in communication with the yolk sac through the vitreointestinal duct. Now this area we are primarily concerned with. So the cardiogenic field, how it appears. Actually what happens is, the vascular system appears in the middle of the 3rd week, when the embryo is no longer able to satisfy its nutritional requirements just by diffusion. There are cardiac progenital cells which are lying in the epiblast, and the neural plate is there. This is the primitive streak from where the cells, they start migrating towards the cranial end. This is the embryonic disc actually, and the neural plate is over here. Now what happens is, the cells, they start migrating and blood islands are formed. These blood islands, they actually form a horseshoe shaped structure over here, and on both the sides this horseshoe shaped structure, because of the union of the islands, is formed. Now this is again a clay model where you can very well understand how this change is taking place. Now this is the primitive streak, cranial end of the embryonic disc having the procaudal plate, caudal end having the cloaca, and this is the primitive streak, and 3 different colors are shown here. Now this is intraembryonic mesoderm, which has differentiated into blue colored paraxial mesoderm, then purple colored intermediate mesoderm, and the yellow one, the lateral plate mesoderm. Now this lateral plate mesoderm is the one we are concerned with. Because heart is mesodermal in origin, This lateral plate mesoderm is the one that undergoes changes. See, cell death occurs in this mesoderm and small cavities appear. Then these small cavities, they fuse to form a larger cavity that is known as intraembryonic coelom. Now this intraembryonic coelom grows cranially and fuses with the other side rostral to the procaudal plate. And it is this area which is important, which forms the pericardial cavity, because this intraembryonic coelom is responsible for the formation of all the body cavities, whether it is pericardial, pleural or peritoneal. So the pericardial cavity is the one which is formed rostral to the procaudal plate over here. And the blood islands, they come together and the cardiogenic field is formed. And this, when cardiogenic field changes take place, there are two heart tubes which are formed and they unite to form a single heart tube. So this is on the 19th day when these two heart tubes or the endocardial tubes, they fuse with the two primitive aortae. See, this is a diagrammatic representation of the two heart tubes. Initially they are single. Initially they are individually placed and then they unite to form a single heart tube which is cranially fused, but caudally two separate horns are available or they appear there. Because this caudal end is the unfused end. Now dilatations appear in this single heart tube or the primary heart tube, and from cranial to caudal they are named as bulbus cordis, primitive ventricle, primitive atrium, and the two horns at the caudal end are the horns of sinus venosus. Now again, this how to differentiate which is the cranial end and which is the caudal end. So the caudal end or the venous end has got sinus venosus, that is two horns are there, and these two horns are receiving tributaries from the right common cardinal vein, umbilical vein and the right vitelline vein, whereas the left horn again has got three subdivisions: left common cardinal, left umbilical and left vitelline vein. So the caudal end is the venous end, and I remember it like this, that both have got U in them, so it is the venous end, whereas R is artery and cranial end is arterial end. Now various derivatives are there from different denotations. So arterial end has got truncus arteriosus, then conus is there, then primitive ventricle, atrioventricular canal, atrium and the sinus venosus, right and left horns are opening into the atrium initially. Later on the sinus venosus gets absorbed into the right atrium. Then when this tube is formed and when you compare it with the adult structure, you cannot correlate, because this heart tube continues to elongate and bend, and this bending starts at day 23 and ends at day 28. And the cephalic end is bending or looping towards the ventral side caudally and to the right, whereas the dorsal end is moving towards the dorsum cranially and to the left. See, this is how the cardiac looping is taking place. Then septation of the heart takes place, that is the lumen of the heart, which is initially single, partitions into four definitive chambers by the four septa. These septa are atrioventricular septum, interatrial septum, interventricular septum and the aorticopulmonary septum. Now first of all, the atrioventricular septum. Now this atrioventricular septum is basically dividing atrioventricular canal into right and left atrioventricular canals, and it's formed by the fusion of AV cushions. See, these are the endocardial cushions. You can very well understand when the diagram is line diagram. So these are the two dorsal and ventral cushions which appear in this atrioventricular canal, and they grow towards each other and fuse, so as right and left atrioventricular orifices are formed. Then there is formation of atria. Now when we talk about the formation of atria, it is the septum spurium that is important. Now septum spurium is basically the opening of sinus venosus into the right atrium. So initially it is a broad opening at the back of the right atrium, but then it gradually narrows down, and see, this is the narrowing over here, and gradually it shifts to the right. When this septum spurium is formed, it is guarded by two margins. These two margins are actually the right venous valve and the left venous valve, and the septum in between is the septum spurium. This is a narrow slit having two margins. When we talk about the interatrial septum, the interatrial septum basically forms by septum that is appearing from the roof of the common atrial chamber. So initially the atrial chamber is communicating posteriorly with the sinus venosus and antero-inferiorly with the ventricle, but when the partition occurs, right atrium is communicating with the right ventricle and the left atrium is communicating with the left ventricle. So here you see again a diagram where you can very well understand how the septum primum or the septum secundum is formed, and finally the interatrial septum is partitioning the right and left atrium. So septum primum is initially a sickle shaped crest that grows from the roof of the common atrial chamber into the lumen. This is the first portion of the septum primum. It grows down towards the fused AV cushions, and just before the fusion, this opening is the ostium primum in some books and foramen primum in other books. So this is ostium primum. Now when this fusion takes place, in the upper portion of the septum primum, cell death occurs, as in the case we have talked earlier. These openings that we talked in the lateral plate mesoderm, where the cell death occurs. Similarly, the cell death occurs in the upper part of septum primum, and large cavity is formed by the fusion of small cavities. Now this is the ostium secundum. See here, this is ostium secundum. By the time this is happening, a new crescent shaped fold appears between the septum spurium and the septum primum. This is known as septum secundum. Now this septum secundum doesn't fuse with the AV cushions or with the septum primum. It grows downwards and a narrow space is left between the two. As you can see here, they do not approximate each other. So the septum secundum and the septum primum, they are just approximating each other, but still a gap is left. This is just before birth. At the birth, fusion takes place, that is these two approximate when the left atrial pressure increases and blood is beginning to flow backwards. They approximate and closure takes place. So the complete interatrial septum is formed. Now, this is given the name of oval foramen or foramen ovale. Sometimes it remains patent even after birth, that is, blood is able to flow through this. And sometimes just you are able to pass a probe through this, that is known as probe patency of oval foramen. Now, the sinus venosus actually is a funnel-like structure which gets incorporated into the right atrium. And this happens when the left venous wall remains as such, but the right venous wall greatly expands so as to form a structure that is known as crista terminalis. This is the crista terminalis, and inside is the opening of superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and the valve of coronary sinus. Whereas the left venous wall remains fused to the atrial septum. So, and it gets incorporated inside in such a manner that the right common cardinal and the right pit-line vein, they remain as such, and they form the parts of superior and the inferior vena cava. Superior vena cava is formed from the right common cardinal, whereas the terminal part of inferior vena cava is formed from the right pit-line vein. So this is how the sinus venosus gets absorbed into the right atrium. And on the left side, most of it retrogresses. It is just the left common cardinal vein and the left horn of sinus venosus that persist and results in the formation of coronary sinus along with the oblique vein of the left atrium. Now, this is how the sinus venosus is incorporated, and the right atrium is derived from the right half of the primitive atrium. That is, this whole is the primitive atrium. And the sinus venosus, which gets absorbed and right venous wall expands to form the crista terminalis. This crista terminalis is basically the dividing line between the primitive atrial chamber and the absorbed sinus venerum. So it is the rough and the smooth part. Sinus venerum is the smooth part, whereas the primitive part of the primitive atrium is the rough part. And when we talk about the left atrial chamber, basically the absorption of pulmonary veins takes place. Initially there is a single opening, and this pulmonary vein is absorbing the primitive left atrium and getting expanded. So initially a single pulmonary vein is there which opens into the left half of the septum, left half of the atrium to the left of septum primum. See, this is septum primum and the pulmonary vein opening is over here to the left of septum primum in the left atrial chamber. And this vein divides, as we trace it backwards, it divides into right and left branches, and then 4 openings are there because this pulmonary vein gets absorbed as such along with its branches to form the smooth part of left atrium, which is derived from the absorption of the 4 pulmonary veins. And this primitive left atrium is the rough part. So here it is, the left atrium is derived from left half of the primitive atrial chamber, left half of the atrioventricular canal, and absorbed proximal parts of the pulmonary veins. Moving on to the bulbus cordis. Now, bulbus cordis is divisible into a proximal conus and distal truncus. And this is because of the union of right superior and left inferior truncus swellings. Now, this is the spiral septum actually. And because this is spiral, the fusion is in such a manner that at its lower end, the pulmonary trunk lies ventral to the aorta. But as it is traced upwards, it comes to lie on its left side. See, this is the orientation of the spiral septum. Now, when we talk about the interventricular septum, basically the interventricular septum is formed from 3 components. Something comes from the truncus arteriosus in the form of bulbar ridges. As you can see here, the bulbous septum is there. This bulbous septum is basically made up of right and left bulbar ridges which fuse with each other and grow downwards into the common ventricular chamber. Then muscular part of the interventricular septum is there. This muscular part is growing upwards towards the bulbar ridges from the floor of the primitive ventricle. And when these two try to reach each other, they fall short and a gap is left. Now, this gap is filled by the proliferation from the atrioventricular cushions, and this is known as the membranous part of interventricular septum. See, subdivision have written here. This is interventricular septum grows upwards, and two ridges, they grow downwards, and the rest of this is the muscular membranous part, which is from the AV cushion. So here is the diagrammatic representation. The conotruncal septum is there, right and left bulbar ridges, or the right and left conotruncal ridges. This is written in Langdon's, whereas Inderbir Singh says that it is right and left bulbar ridges. Now, the development of the ventricles. Ventricles are derived from the primitive ventricular chamber along with the proximal part of the bulbous cordis, that is known as conus, and give rise to infundibulum of the right ventricle and to the aortic vestibule of the left ventricle. Whereas the aortic and pulmonary valves are formed at the junction of conus and truncus, and the mitral and tricuspid valves, they formed by the proliferation of connective tissue of atrioventricular canal. So, from the embryo, the adult derivatives are like this. Truncus arteriosus gives rise to the ascending aorta and the pulmonary trunk, and they both are separated by a spiral septum. Then there is bulbus cordis, forming the smooth upper part of the right ventricle and the smooth upper part of the left ventricle. Primitive ventricle is responsible for the formation of trabeculated part of the right and left ventricles. And the primitive atrium is again responsible for the trabeculated part of the right and left atrium. Trabeculated means the rough part. That is the original part. And sinus venosus is responsible for the smooth part of the right atrium, known as sinus venerum, coronary sinus, and the oblique vein of the left atrium. Now, moving on to the anomalies of the heart. These anomalies are very important because in order to understand the anomaly, normal should be clear. So we have already talked about the normal anatomy or the normal embryology, and coming to the anomalies. So first is anomalies of position. This is dextrocardia. Now, dextrocardia is when the chambers and blood vessels are reversed from side to side. Here you can see the normal heart, and this is dextrocardia. Here this is the mirror image dextrocardia, normal heart and circulation, and the mirror image is there where you can find the dextrocardia. This is because the heart has looped to the left instead of to the right. Then there is ectopia cordis. Ectopia cordis is again anomaly of position. Heart lies exposed on the front of the chest because of the deficient development of the chest wall. See, the heart is lying exposed. This is again ectopia cordis. Then there are defective development of septa, whether it could be interatrial or interventricular. So interatrial septal defects are the ostium primum defect. As you can see, this ostium primum is persisting. Then there could be ostium secundum defect where the ostium secundum persists, or there could be propatency of foramen ovale or patent foramen ovale, as we have already talked about. Now, this is just a diagrammatic representation where you can very well understand things. Now, ostium secundum defect is caused by excessive resorption of the septum primum, and there may be complete absence of the septum secundum. Then there could be common atrium where there is complete failure of the interatrial septum to develop, and that is known as cor trilocular biventricular. Means the ventricles are two but the atrial chamber is single. Now when we come to the interventricular septal defects, this could be either in the membranous portion, or there could be defect in the formation of muscular portion of the interventricular septum, or the proliferation from the AV cushion does not take place. So the heart could be either two-chambered or three-chambered. Now two-chambered heart is when just single atria, single ventricle. Trilocular is three-chambered heart. Three-chambered heart means in this manner or in this manner. Where there is two atrial chambers means the interatrial septum is there but the interventricular septum is absent. Or it could be interventricular septum being present and the interatrial septum is absent. Then there could be persistent truncus arteriosus, where the conotruncal ridges, they fail to fuse and descend towards ventricles, so that undivided truncus overrides both the ventricles and receives blood from both the sides like this. There is cyanosis and membranous portion of the interventricular septum is defective. One very important anomaly is of the conotruncal region, and that is the Fallett's tetralogy. This is because of unequal division of the conus resulting from anterior displacement of the conotruncal septum, and 4 defects are there. And this is named as Fallett's tetralogy because it was after the scientist Fallett, so it is written with a capital F, and 4 defects are there. One is interventricular septal defect. See, interventricular septal defect. Aorta is overriding the upper edge of ventricular septum. Pulmonary stenosis is there, and because of this back pressure changes, hypertrophy of the right ventricular wall is there. Then there is transposition of great vessels. When the conotruncal septum fails to follow its normal spiral course and it runs straight downwards, so the aorta is receiving blood from the right ventricle and pulmonary trunk from the left ventricle. This is transposition of great vessels. I hope you understood this development of cardiovascular system. Thank you all for your patient listening. Stay safe everyone, and if you like this lecture then please subscribe and share it.